Hi, so let's talk about social contract theory. As you saw in the last section, egoism and altruism both fail as moral theories because neither one respects the principle of equal treatment, in which we have to accept that everyone is equal. My desires are no more important than yours, and yours are no more important than mine. We have to regard everyone's needs and everyone's desires as completely equal. So we can't completely endorse egoism, and we can't completely endorse altruism, in which we might sacrifice entire parts of our lives for complete strangers. So we move into this idea of social contract theory. Now, social contract theory is a very popular ethical theory. It's really the one where we most see overlap with legal systems, governments. It's very popular. It's very effective. And one of the reasons why it does work is because it plays on some of this selfishness. So we're going to go back to thinking that maybe there is this innate selfishness. Maybe we do need to respect that selfishness and figure out a theory that builds on it, but one where that selfish desire isn't completely run away, where we don't just get to completely step on everybody else's interest, but where we use some of our selfishness to better support society at large. So how does that work? Thomas Hobbes said famously, and you'll see the quote here on the page above me, that the life of man is nasty, poor, brutish, and short. He wrote The Leviathan famously, in which he described man as this monstrous being, and that really humans are their worst selves. Now, if that's true, he said, if you look around and see the sadness and despair in life, we would all be pretty miserable. We are pretty miserable, he said. So he came up, in addition to this idea of life being short, brutish, nasty, and short twice, he came up with the idea of the state of nature. If you'll look in your textbook, there are 4 different traits to the state of nature. First, in the state of nature, we find limited resources. Now, this is just a truth about nature, the natural world. There are, in fact, limited resources on Earth and in any given place where we might find ourselves. I often say that it would be great to teach this course in conjunction with the show Lost, the film about the people on a deserted island, victims of a plane crash. In that scenario, you see a lot of the similar themes come up that we find in social contract theory. Limited resources. Let's say you're on a plane crash somewhere. There's gonna be only so much food left in the plane, only so much medicine left in the plane. But in addition to limited resources, he said that there was limited altruism. So initially in Lost, when the plane crashes, people are kind of nice to each other. People are helping each other. They're trying to tend to each other's wounds. They're sharing. And then eventually they realize they're not going to get rescued. So suddenly that altruism runs really thin. People are starting to really look out for themselves, and they're not as interested in sharing and helping one another. So limited resources, limited altruism, equality of need, back to that principle of equal treatment. My hunger is the same as your hunger. If we were on a deserted island together, we never even met in most cases, but if we were to find ourselves in a physical place together, just because I'm the teacher of this class, the instructor of this class, it doesn't mean that my hunger and my thirst is more important than yours. There's an equality of need among humans. And then lastly, equality of power. The idea that if you've ever seen Hunger Games, just because someone isn't strong doesn't mean they won't have access to those resources. They might be really fast. They might be really smart. That all of us in our own way are able to vie for those limited resources as the best we can. So limited resources, limited altruism, equality of need, and essential equality of human power. So these are the 4 facts of the state of nature that Hobbes wanted to hypothesize, and in fact they are true. They are true facts about our own nature, our own life on Earth. And he says if we were constantly aware of those facts, we would all be living in constant fear of violent death. Because if we have resources, we know that other people would want to kill us to get those resources. If we are trying to get those resources, we're vulnerable to death in the fight to get the resources. And this would be a pretty unpleasant way to live. No one wants to live like this. So Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the other founder of the social contract theory, said we have to come up with a way for humans to have a peaceful life, a stable life, where they're not in fear of this violent death and where they're not constantly aware of the state of nature. So what does that look like? How do we establish a social contract? So really quickly, social contract theory is the idea that given that backdrop, given that background of the state of nature, again, a desert island scenario, how could we come up with rules that would allow us to live peacefully with one another? So in essence, a social contract theory is the idea that rational people come together, you have a big powwow, you sit down, you discuss what rules would make sense, what rules would be acceptable, what rules other rational human beings could expect of one another. Nothing too crazy, no like sacrificing yourself on the subway to save someone else, but just basic level, I pay my taxes, it helps support the roads that you drive on as much as it supports the roads that I drive on. We all kind of share the idea of going to a potluck, you bring a casserole and you get to eat the salad that somebody else brought. We all are contributing something to the table in a metaphorical sense, and we all get to take something from the table. There's a reciprocity there in the social contract theory, and that through the reciprocity, the trust, and the cooperation, three key elements in the social contract theory, we are able to establish a code of living, a code of governing behavior that helps us live a stable life, a stable and then an ethical life. So again, you see how social contract theory actually does play on my own selfish instincts, but I'm curbing my selfishness ever so much, ever so slightly, in order to benefit in the long run. I always use the example of driving. I don't do a lot of driving. I live in New York City, but when I did used to drive, if you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry, you might get there faster if you ran every red light, every stop sign, you rode on the shoulder of the road if there are cars in front of you. It's possible you could get where you were going faster, but you're not going to get there safer. And in the long run, over an entire lifetime of driving, if you choose to obey the traffic laws, you guarantee your own selfish survival on the road than if you decide to run the light. You might get there faster, but you also might be in a terrible accident and be very severely harmed. So in the social contract theory, the stakes are very, very high for breaking the social contract. And it's not worth it to most of us to break those laws, to disregard those laws, because we would rather reap the benefits of the social contract in the long run. I think that's all that I wanted to say about this for the moment. I'll come back to you.